Good day, gentlemen. Dirk here with the MGTOW solution. This will be my second book review, and this one's by request. If you haven't yet read The Feminist Lie, subtitled It Was Never About Equality, by Bob Lewis, I'd say that it's definitely worth a read if you want to understand more about feminism. We already know that it was never about equality, but the book dives into that issue in depth. It's well written, well researched, and well presented. The book was published in 2017 and so contains up-to-date information and addresses the impact of new media right from the start. Here's an excerpt from the acknowledgments. Quote, "This text wouldn't have been possible without the extensive scientific research, investigative journalism, and courage of the many professionals I cited throughout my writing. Just as important, if not more so, are the independent journalists and online content creators, whether they're video creators, vloggers, or bloggers. This also includes the shit posters, meme creators, and online trolls. Society owes these independent online voices our most sincere gratitude because even though feminism was able to effectively silence, intimidate, or otherwise suppress the many traditional and academic voices of opposition online stood firm. Today, these online voices still stand as vanguards against constant onslaught from feminists. They've been so effective in countering the feminist narrative that they've changed the conversation. Feminists know their days are numbered, which is why they're making constant calls to silence voices of opposition by maliciously reframing disagreement as a hate crime. So the author has done his research and seems to understand that those who dare to speak out against feminism are subjected to a concerted effort to shut them down. The first chapter is devoted to feminism and tactics, many of which you'll already be aware of, but you may pick up something new. Any men still stuck in blue pill hell reading this will be in for a rude awakening. In the first chapter, some definitions are provided, including choice feminism and intersectional feminism, which basically comes down to individual feminism and collectivist feminism, respectively. Information is presented about the oppression Olympics, the co-opting of the civil rights movement, and the underlying bigotry, racism, and misandry inherent throughout the history of feminism. The author goes fairly in-depth on that history, including notable events and key players. Here's a bit on choice and intersectional feminism. Quote, "Regardless of their differences, both brands of feminism believe in the conspiracy theory that a cabal of men is responsible for what feminists perceive to be a systemic oppression of women. They refer to this cabal as the patriarchy. They use their opposition to this mythical patriarchy as justification for every feminist act, even though there's never been any objective evidence that such an oppressive gender-based cabal exists anywhere inside history outside of Islam." End quote. This is followed by a look at the various tactics used by feminists to advance their agenda and stifle dissent. Let me give you a couple of examples. Quote, "This leads us to our second extremely common feminist debate tactic, personal attacks and shaming. The beauty of personal attacks is that they're only used when no valid argument exists. To me, they're an admission of defeat. While a tactic in and of itself, a personal attack or shaming is just another form of deflection to avoid addressing any valid criticism. When feminist hypocrisy and ideology is questioned, rather than respond to the issues, feminists will, more often than not, attack the critic. They usually do this by proclaiming that the speaker is a bitter man who cannot get a girlfriend." End quote. Sound familiar? Chapter 2 is titled History Feminists Ignore, which examines historical facts that feminists don't want people to know about. Here's a sample. Quote, "It turns out that most feminists throughout history were raging bigots and misandrists, man-haters. These early feminists made no efforts to hide their racism and other aspects of their bigotry. So while modern feminists claim these historical figures advocated equality, they didn't. They advocated gynocentrism. In some cases, as you'll see, they even advocated genocide. End quote. Here's another, this time with the author quoting feminist Elizabeth Stanton, who stated, quote, "The male element is a destructive force, stern, selfish, aggrandizing, loving war, violence, conquest, acquisition, breeding in the material and moral world alike discord, disorder, disease, and death." End quote. This same woman stated 30 years later that, quote, "We are as a sex infinitely superior to men." End quote. There are lots of quotes from feminists in the book, and this helps shed light on their way of thinking. But here's a fun definition for male privilege from the Urban Dictionary. Quote, "A fictional term made by butthurt lesbians with hair shorter than their intelligence to use as an excuse for anything and everything. Example, I went to court for stabbing a man because he said I looked like a pig, and then I was arrested because male privilege." End quote. Chapter 4 covers the whole wage gap lie. In fact, that's the title of the chapter. The following chapter gets into the fake rape pandemic. Here's a sample looking at the top 3 reasons women make false rape claims. Quote, "Approximately 56% of false rape allegations were to serve as an alibi to cover up consensual sexual encounters." Dr. Kanan notes the following example from the study. A married 30-year-old female reported that she had been raped in her apartment complex. During polygraph examination, she admitted she was a willing partner. She reported she had been raped because her partner did not stop before ejaculation, as he had agreed, and she was afraid she was pregnant. Her husband was overseas. About 27% of false rape allegations were used as a means for the woman to extract revenge because the man rejected her. An example Dr. Kanan noted follows. An 18-year-old woman was having sex with a boarder in her mother's house for a period of 3 months. When the mother learned of her behavior from other boarders, the mother ordered the man to leave. The complainant learned that her lover was packing, and she went to his room and told him she was ready to leave with him in an hour. He responded with, "Who the hell wants you?" She briefly argued with him and then proceeded to the police station to report that he had raped her. She admitted the false charge during the polygraph examination. Finally, close to 18% of false rape allegations were for attention-seeking and sympathy purposes. End quote. The author moves on to domestic violence, citing evidence that in non-reciprocal violence, the woman is the perpetrator in 70.7% of cases. And the author cites his source, the peer-reviewed American Journal of Public Health. That 70.7% number probably isn't well known, but shouldn't be surprising given the accepted guidelines that it's never okay to hit a woman, even if she's a violent psycho assaulting you. Remaining chapters include female privilege, feminism harms women, feminism's reaction, and finally a chapter titled The Solutions. Not surprisingly, the solutions consist of generally accepted red pill ideas, but still serves as a good review. Overall, I think the author did a great job providing an overview of a topic that should be of interest to all men and will certainly be of interest to MGTOW. It's not a particularly long read, but covers a lot of ground. Given that feminism is still on the rise and still doing a lot of damage, it's probably a good idea to fully understand the problem, and the Feminist Lie will be a good place to start. Some of the content is liable to piss you off, like the man's suicide note that his ex claimed was her intellectual property to keep it from going public. You can't make this shit up. but there's really no way for any man with a sense of right or wrong to look at feminism without getting pissed. My takeaway from the Feminist Lie is that I'm on the right track by going my own way, and recommending that other men do the same. MGTOW may lead men to books like this, but books like this may also lead men to MGTOW, which in my mind really is the best option for men who have had it with the feminocracy. If you like what I'm doing here, hit subscribe and bang the bell on your way out, and thumbs up all MGTOW videos to help spread the message. Thanks for listening, and have a great day.